not only did Batman and my dad help me get into drawing, because at that point, once I got the comic book, once I saw that, one day I just picked up a pencil and I did a stick figure. And my first stick figure was a stick figure with pointy ears and a cape. My first drawing was Batman. How many of you guys are DC Comics fans? All right. How many of you guys are Marvel Comics fans? Okay, okay. Now, I'm kind of in both camps. All right. By default, I'm a DC guy. Batman is owned by DC Comics, therefore, I'm a DC dude. All right. And the thing about DC that I love is that DC Comics have the icons of the superhero. Like, when you think about the template of the superhero, you know, this dude, you think of DC Comics. All right, they have Batman, they have Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, which, by the way, Green Lantern over the past couple years has been a phenomenal book. For those of you who've been reading it, Blackest Night, awesome. The Flash, Aquaman, who is actually a lot cooler than the Super Friends made him out to be, Martian Manhunter, so on and so on and so forth. So I really love DC Comics because of the icons, because of their A-list, their all-star team. Now, with Marvel, don't get me wrong, I got a lot of love for Marvel, but I wasn't a Captain America dude. I wasn't a Hulk dude. I wasn't Spider-Man. What I loved about Marvel was their B-list of characters. More importantly, like their street level characters, like Power Man and Iron Fist, like Daredevil, Moon Knight. What I also loved about Marvel is that Marvel did create their own icons. I mean, granted, the whole Marvel catalog has got iconic characters. X-Men, the aforementioned Captain America, Hulk, Iron Man, all of those. But the icons that I gravitated towards was that Marvel created the icons of the African American superheroes. Black Panther, who's the Jackie Robinson of the modern African American superhero, came out of Marvel, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Blade, who in all honesty didn't become super sweet until the movies came out, in my opinion, again, created by Marv Wolfman, Gene Colan, Dr. Voodoo, formerly Brother Voodoo, who came out in the 70s. Of course, Storm of the X-Men, who's probably the most recognizable female character from the Marvel Universe, more so than the Invisible Woman, Don't Let Them Fool You. All right? The Falcon, Captain America's partner, a bad shut your mouth in his own right. That's what I loved about Marvel. I love that Marvel took it to another level. They took it to the street level. Hey, my, I guess for lack of a better word, my cousin Julius, he saw me drawing in my sketchbook. And he looked at my characters, and he was like, how come you don't have any black characters? Why don't you create a black character? And I thought to myself, why don't I? And so, I did. And at that point, all I started doing was creating characters that looked like me, that brought my culture into play. And that's what kept me going in terms of drawing superheroes for quite some time. Now, another big influence around this time was also international comics. Because once I got into comic books, I was into comic books. It wasn't just DC. It wasn't just Marvel. I knew there was more out there. And so, even as a little kid, I'm reading like independent comic books like ElfQuest. I'm also discovering comics from overseas. How many of you guys know of Heavy Metal Magazine? Right. Now, imagine like a little 10-year-old reading Heavy Metal Magazine. For those of you who've read Heavy Metal magazine, right? It was kind of one of those things where you can't just pull it out in front of your moms. It's like, oh my goodness, there are naked people up in here. You can't do that. But it opened my world to the comics of the world. It opened my world to comic books from France. Comic books, of course, from Italy, from Japan. Yeah, I have Afro Samurai up there, but Afro Samurai was created by a Japanese cat and brought over to the States. And Samuel L. Jackson globbed onto it, made it a success here in the States. And we're going to talk about that a little later, about cultures merging, mixing, and that sort of. Comic books from England, of course, Judge Dredd, 2000 AD. Comic books from China. Not only did China give us wonderful kung fu movies, which also happen to be a huge influence to me as well, but they also had some really awesome comic books. I really globbed onto these very different art styles, and I started studying all these different art styles. And I thought to myself as a little kid, like, I want to draw like that. At the age of 10, I realized that I wanted to be a comic book artist. Reading the Odyssey at the age of 9. I read Edith Hamilton's Mythology end to end. And when I was done with that, I was like, I want to know more. So I picked up the Roman stuff. I was like, oh, Romans are just fighting off the Greeks. The same gods, different names. Forget them. The Norse gods, on the other hand, were cool. I mean, granted, know about the Norse gods because of Jack Kirby's story, which we'll talk about later. But I wanted to know the real story. I wanted to know the roots of everything. And mythology is the root. I realized as I was reading this stuff, and as I was going on and on and on about the mythology, about comic books, about superhero, is that all of this ties together. The root of the superhero is mythology.